Welcome to Deep Dive. Today we're taking a close look at a really significant shift happening in global mobility. We're talking about the changing appeal of the United Kingdom for Indian students and professionals. You know, for decades, the UK, along with the US, was a top destination, a huge draw. But recent data and some major policy changes are, well, they're reshaping that picture quite dramatically. So our mission today is to unpack this complex situation, highlight the key factors, and really understand what it means for you if you're maybe considering the UK for your future. Let's start with the numbers because they really tell a story here. The data shows a pretty steep decline in Indian mobility to the UK. Quite stark, actually. We're seeing work visas for Indian citizens basically halved. They dropped to about 81,000 in 2024, down from over 162,000 in 2023. That's a 50% drop in just 1 year. And student visas, they're not far behind, down 42% from around 159,000 in 2023 to about 92,000 in 2024. These aren't small changes. It's a big shift.
It is. And what's fascinating, is how you interpret these numbers. They're stark. Absolutely. Some people clearly see this as a major decline or real drop in the UK's pull factor. But others, especially those who track post-COVID trends, they tend to describe it more as a correction. Like there was this huge, maybe unsustainable surge in demand right after the pandemic eased. And maybe this is things settling back down, but to a new lower level.
A correction. Okay. That's an interesting perspective. Does that imply it might stabilize now?
It could. It suggests maybe a more predictable, though definitely tighter landscape going forward. But regardless of whether you call it a decline or a correction, the reasons behind it are clear. They're rooted in very deliberate policy changes from the UK Home Office.
Okay, let's unpack that. What specific policy changes are really driving this decrease, especially for the work visas? That 50% drop is huge.
Right. The Home Office reports point to a few key things. There's definitely been tighter scrutiny on employers getting the sponsor licenses. And then there's the ban on overseas recruitment for new care workers. That's kicking in fully in July 2025.
The care worker route. That was big, wasn't it?
Huge. Applications for the health and care worker visa just plummeted. They went from a peak of, 18,300 in August 2023 down to only 1,300 by July 2025.
Wow.
Yeah. And even the main skilled worker visa route, that saw a dip too. It used to be around 6,000 applications a month, roughly, until 2024. Now it's down to 4,900 as of July 2025. A big reason for that is the jump in the minimum salary threshold. It's now £41,700, up from £38,700.
Okay, quite a jump.
Definitely. And for Indian professionals who made up, 22% of all UK work visas in 2024, this signals a fundamental shift in who the UK is trying to attract. Higher earners, specific skills.
And what about the students? That 42% drop is still really significant, even if India remains the second largest source country. Why are Indian students who've been so important for UK universities seeming to look elsewhere, or at least fewer are coming?
Yeah, that's the crucial question for the education sector. The main driver seems to be the rule change back in January 2024. It essentially barred most students on taught courses like master's degrees from bringing dependents, so spouses or children.
Right, that was a big policy change.
It had a massive immediate impact. Dependent applications fell by a huge 86% between December 2023 and July 2025. You see, for many Indian families, the UK wasn't just about getting a degree. It was also seen as maybe a pathway for the family unit. Having that support system there, that possibility has now been drastically reduced.
So it changes the whole calculation for families.
Exactly. It forces a rethink.
Okay, so we've got this picture of tightening rules, falling numbers, but then there's this other major development happening almost in parallel. The India-UK Free Trade Agreement, the FTA. This sounds contradictory. How does this fit in? What does it mean for Indians looking at the UK now?
It does seem contradictory on the surface, doesn't it? But it's about different objectives, really. If you look at the bigger picture, the overall government strategy, laid out in things like immigration white papers, aims to cut net migration numbers. But the FTA is specifically focused on boosting the economies of both countries. And it does that by making it easier for certain skilled professionals and businesses to move temporarily between India and the UK.
So temporary is the key word here, not long-term settlement.
Precisely. It's about facilitating trade, services, short-term projects, not large-scale permanent migration. It's targeted economic grease, if you like.
Okay, that makes sense. So what specific pathways or benefits does the FTA actually create? What does it look like in practice?
Well, the idea is to cut some of the red tape for things like the skilled worker visa and the global talent routes, making them a bit smoother. It also introduces a temporary visitor permit up to 12 months for specific roles. Think IT experts, yoga instructors, chefs, musicians, niche but valuable skills.
Interesting.
And it definitely aims to make intra-company transfers easier for big companies moving staff back and forth. But the really big thing, I think, is the Double Contribution Convention, the DCC.
Right, tell us about that.
So this exempts Indian professionals who are posted temporarily in the UK for up to 36 months from paying Social Security contributions in both countries.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a huge cost saving.
It really is. It's estimated to benefit around 75,000 Indian workers and over 900 employers, mainly in the IT sector. For them, the UK is a vital market, so removing that double payment burden is a massive incentive for temporary projects and postings.
That DCC does sound like a significant plus, especially for tech. But I remember hearing some talk around the FTA, initial reports mentioning something like a relaxation of rules on family members.
Yeah.
How does that square with the crackdown on dependents we just talked about for students and care workers? Is the FTA actually loosening family rules?
That's a really important point, and where things get nuanced. You're right, there was some early discussion, maybe some optimistic reporting around the FTA that hinted at easier rules for family members, but the actual implemented immigration policies across the board have gone the other way, tightening dependent rules, especially for students and care workers. The FTA's core focus remains on that temporary, skilled economic mobility for the individual worker or business person.
So not really about family reunification.
Not primarily, no. It doesn't seem to override those broader, more restrictive, dependent policies that have been put in place elsewhere. It's targeted economic movement, not a general opening for families via this route.
Okay, got it. Let's pivot back to the students for a moment. Despite all these changes, these hurdles, the UK clearly still holds a strong appeal for higher education. Why is that? Why do so many still choose the UK?
Yeah, it definitely does. There are several enduring reasons. First, the UK offers a world-class, highly respected education system, and it's in English, which is a major advantage. The one-year master's courses are particularly attractive to Indian students. It's efficient, gets you qualified faster.
Quicker return on investment potential.
Exactly. Then there's the historical tie between India and the UK. There's a certain familiarity, established communities. Geographically, it's closer than North America, and it's a great base for exploring Europe. And, you can't discount the cultural pull. Cities like London are incredibly vibrant, diverse, lots of connections to India, including Bollywood. It's an exciting place to be a student.
But what about the reality on the ground? Students arrive with these aspirations, but it's not always smooth sailing, is it? What are the big challenges they face?
No, it certainly isn't always easy. The cost of living is a major one, especially in London and the Southeast. It's expensive. Balancing demanding studies, often crammed into that 1 year with the need to work part-time just to cover rent and food. That's tough. It's a real juggle.
I bet.
Students often talk about the pressure, trying to find relevant work experience alongside just earning money. You hear stories about finding affordable housing being a nightmare, navigating transport, all while hitting academic deadlines. It requires a lot of resilience.
So what advice do successful students or graduates offer? How do they navigate it?
The key seems to be proactive engagement, using university career services right from the start, getting involved in student societies, maybe even starting an Indian society if there isn't one, and tapping into existing community networks is huge. Places like temples, cultural centers, they can offer support, advice, maybe even job leads. Building that network is vital.
So putting this all together, what's the takeaway for someone listening right now who might be weighing up the UK despite these challenges?
I think the best advice comes from British Indian professionals who've been through it. They often say, approach your time in the UK like an investor. Don't just scramble for the first job you can find. Aim for an experience that transforms you, builds real long-term career capital. The graduate route visa is crucial here. It gives you 2, sometimes 3 years post-study to work without needing employer sponsorship initially.
So breathing room to find the right job.
Exactly. Time to find something that aligns with your degree and your goals, not just any job to stay in the country. It allows for genuine career building. And for younger professionals, don't forget the Young Professionals Scheme. That's 3,000 visas a year for Indians aged 18 to 30 with a degree and some savings. £2,530 currently. It lets you live and work in the UK for up to 2 years. Great for getting international experience and building networks early on.
And looking at the bigger picture again, what does this all mean for UK universities themselves? They rely heavily on international students, don't they?
They do. International students are a major economic contributor, a key export. So yes, the decline in numbers, especially from a large market like India, definitely causes financial concern for universities. Those higher international fees often subsidize costs across the board. But it's also true that the UK genuinely values the broader contributions of international students, the diversity, the research links, the soft power. So the challenge for the UK government is this constant balancing act, trying to manage overall migration numbers while still attracting top global talent and maintaining the competitiveness of its world-class universities. It's a tricky path to tread.
So for you, our listener, trying to make sense of this shifting landscape, what's the final word? What's the most important thing to keep in mind?
Well, the landscape is definitely shifting, no doubt about it. That traditional Anglo-American dream isn't the only game in town anymore. Countries like Australia and Canada are actively courting Indian talent, often with policies seen as more welcoming or straightforward.
So more competition for the UK.
Absolutely. However, the UK's core strengths, the quality of education, the research infrastructure, the professional opportunities in fields like finance, law, tech, those remain very strong. The key really in this environment is meticulous research. Don't rely on hearsay or outdated information. Go directly to the source, official university websites, the UK government's visa information pages, reputable bodies like the National Indian Students and Alumni Union UK, NISO. Be wary of agents or intermediaries who might not have your best interests or the latest info at heart. Despite the hurdles we've discussed, countless British Indians will tell you their UK experience was life-changing and absolutely worthwhile. So maybe the question for India's ambitious young generation isn't if they'll seek global opportunities, but where they'll find the best fit. Maybe Toronto, maybe Melbourne, or perhaps still, with careful planning, in the UK.
Okay, so just to briefly recap our conversation today, we've looked at the quite sharp decline in Indians moving to the UK, mainly due to policy shifts affecting work visas, salary thresholds, and student visas, especially the rules around dependence. But we also explored some new opportunities, particularly through the India-UK Free Trade Agreement, which could make things smoother for certain skilled professionals moving temporarily. And we touched on the student experience, the ongoing appeal of UK education versus the real challenges of cost and finding the right work, but also the potential for a really valuable journey. It's definitely a complex picture, evolving all the time, and needs careful thought. We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights to consider. All the best, and we will meet again with another important subject in the next meeting.